Hey everyone, it's Stephanie again, and you are tuned into the review of Married at First Sight, Season 13, Episode 8. All right, before we get started, don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be the first to find out when I post these videos. Y'all, I'm tired. You guys can probably hear it in my voice. Happy Friday, though. Let's just jump into it because I thought that this week was a great episode. Usually I save like the hot button person for the end. I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off with Michaela and Zach though. First of all, I wanna say last week when my husband and I were talking about Michaela and Zach, Michaela's behavior is inexcusable, okay? She acted a fool. The cursing when last week when we mentioned, and I mentioned every week or several times videos, about rules of engagement and ways to argue and having those boundaries. One of those things is often how we talk to each other and what lines we cross. And an example my husband and I have is, not cursing at each other, because that really changes a dynamic. We don't do that anyways. That's not our natural inclination, but some people do that. So for me, when I watched Michaela curse at him before Pastor Cal came in, I was like, ugh. She talked to him like a dog off the street, okay? So that was not appropriate. As a therapist, I have to see people very layered, because I've seen people and worked with people that have not done great things. And so I cannot just see one perspective. Yes, I have a gut instinct about what I like and don't like, but I have been trained and conditioned to see people in layers. So for me last week, it was important to really touch on the trauma with her father because that will show up. And while a lot of people are pointing fingers, a lot of us react from trauma spaces. Does that make it okay? No. Would I have gone off on her like a crazy person? Absolutely. But I just want to start off by saying, because I saw some people saying that a lot of people are giving her excuses. I think that you can see people in the layered ways that they are. She's 100% wrong. She has a lot of work she needs to do. Obviously, we saw more of that this episode. It doesn't mean that you can't stop and see where she is, why she is the way she is, kind of process that, because that's really important, because we often respond from trauma places in our relationships too, unless we have worked and processed and have been able to find healthier mechanisms to do the opposite. So I want to just touch on that. But let's just kick it off with Michaela and Zach. So this week overall was about friends and family, them having their brunch and having people over. It's kind of like a housewarming that they do. And this week with Michaela and Zach, the way that they left off is they had kind of like cleaned things up. But I thought that Zach checked out. Last week, my husband and I was like, he's checked out. And even at the beginning of this episode, I was like, he is checked out based on this conversation that he's having with his friend. And I think his friend is a solid friend, coming from a place of wanting to see his relationship work and wanting him to give the best shot he can. But Zach is checked out because this is all red flags for him in terms of what he's experienced before and what hasn't worked. For whatever reason, after they've cleaned things up, Michaela calls and says, I'm not doing the housewarming, I'm done, I've canceled it. And this really changes the dynamic of their relationship even more because Michaela has a lot of work to do. I'm just gonna say that. Michaela has a lot of work to do. She has like zero coping mechanisms. You can be annoyed if your spouse is not there and you haven't heard back from them and you called and they didn't pick up. You can be annoyed. Even flinging something off the table and just packing up and leaving the apartment immediately, and then cursing the way she did, and then out of nowhere, calling off the housewarming. That is very concerning because Zach can't call it. He's like, none of this stuff is making sense. And so therefore, I don't know. It's like walking in a field of grenades for him. And he's like, I'd rather not walk here. I'd rather not be here. And essentially, we're seeing that from Zach, where he's like, I've been here before with everyone that I've dated before. It has not worked out. I don't want to do this again. And he is incredibly uncomfortable. I think it says a lot that he is so uncomfortable to not wake her up. Like, I get it, babe, let me sleep in. But if something needs to be said, then something needs to be said. So whatever manner she said where he was like scared to wake her up, because that's how it felt like, that was a problem for me. Also, just canceling the housewarming with no reason as to why, and then putting it back on, and then showing up. It was very Jekyll and Hyde, showing up to meet with the girls and talk about their relationship and lying essentially about it, even lying with her friends and painting this pretty picture. So we see that Michaela knows how to present well. She knows enough about herself. She's self-aware enough to know there's certain things that you can't lead with. So she knows how to present well. Even with her friends, marriage is kind of hard, and you would think if you didn't know better. This is why, like, I do not like when people are like on social media and are just hashtagging relationship goals to everyone. I mean, I get it, because some people I see and I was like, oh, they're beautiful. I love that dynamic. You can't hashtag relationship goals to everyone, because you really don't know what's going on. If we went based off of the way that Michaela is presenting, nothing is really going on. And that's like the complete opposite. So she knows how to stuff things. She knows how to, I wouldn't say quickly get over things. She just knows how to avoid things and move on. So when she meets with her friends, if they're getting ready for this housewarming, it's hella awkward, because it's not in truth. It wasn't in truth when she met with the other ladies. And Zach awkwardly walks in there with his one friend, because guess what? I'm not bringing my family, because it was on, then it's off, now it's back on, now I have to explain why. And honestly, I'm not even sure about you at this point. And if I bring my family to you, who's going to have very polarized feelings, that is going to be a detrimental situation, because now they already feel away. So let me just try to save this, because I haven't felt it out. Let me bring my friend, because he's not as invested as my mother. He's a good friend, but like, I think his friend did a great job talking to her about how she needs to be in charge of the way she communicates how she feels, and be accountable for communicating how she feels rather than acting out, because that's what she is. She's throwing temper tantrums and she's acting out. And a lot of you guys reminded me that she said that she grew up seeing kind of like a volatile dynamic with her mom and dad. So a big thing for me watching it was, okay, Zach has to take accountability and setting boundaries. Why are you constantly attracting this type of woman? Why is this constantly being your experience? Do you set boundaries? And up until the end of the episode, we didn't see him do that. We can tell he's uncomfortable. We can tell he's upset. We can tell, okay, I don't want to be here. But you teach people how to treat you. And so you have to set those boundaries. And if you're having the same experience over and over, then you have to take a look and say, why am I having this experience? What am I bringing to it? And how am I being accountable and playing a role? And Zach did that towards the end of the conversation. And I was like, so excited. We were watching last night and we were so excited because, he was he's scared of her, which is sad. Not scared of her like she'll do something to him, but scared of her like is not comfortable, which is even worse. And he's asking her like, how did it get there? What triggered it? Because he wants to know for it to make sense. Well, it's not going to make sense, but I'm glad that he set some boundaries about here's what I've experienced before. Here's what I can't deal with. Here's what doesn't work for me. The way that she called off the housewarming, I feel like he really stood up for himself in that conversation. The thing with Michaela though, when she starts crying, which I felt like those tears were inauthentic, because it felt like she said sorry, right? She took accountability, but it's like sometimes you really have to give people the space to receive, because they're still caught in your storm. She's saying it and she means it, but she quickly wants to get back to where they were. And you can't do that. And so the tears come because now she's realizing, oh, my behavior has consequences. This guy is not going to laugh and say Hurricane K and think it's so cute like your family does. He's going to respond in a way that might have consequences for your behavior. which they do. So she starts crying, which I was just like, okay, these are like save me tears, feel bad for me, I really care. The area that Michaela can't see, that Zach is seeing because he can't understand how this is happening, is, well, you did this as a mechanism. We can call it a control mechanism, but Michaela is very much like, break up with you before you break up with me. It's like I'm going to abandon you. The very thing that she doesn't want, the very things that she has felt, she's doing because she's protecting herself from him, which is not helpful. And she's saying, if I would have known, then I wouldn't have done that. And Zach is like, but why did you do that? And what he's saying is like, why would you do something that's hurtful like that? She's not saying, hey, let me not do the hurtful thing. She's saying, let me not do that hurtful thing. So the behavior is even much deeper that she needs to change, because she needs to realize, I shouldn't do hurtful things. I shouldn't do vindictive things, which she did use the word vindictive when she was talking to his friend, because if she didn't do that, okay, well, I didn't know canceling that was going to do that. Then she would find the next hurtful thing to do because she's operating in that space. And Zach is very aware of that. He doesn't know how to communicate that, but he's very aware. Why that? Like, what took you to that point? Because it'll just take her to another point and another point. And he decides to leave. My only thing with that is, if we start doing that, like, one person has to be the one to set the example and do the thing that is harder to do, which is stay. So for me, if they still want to make this work, it's really important, I think, for him to have stayed. She should have stayed too, so she should have never left. But then when it's like, I gotta get away, I need my space, I have to, okay, well, raise your hand if you're married and you've needed your space. Like, you can't get into that, or you shouldn't get into that type of dynamic of, I'm leaving, I need my space, because then it becomes something it creates this pathway to be able to just leave. And so I would advise these couples, and really any couple, and there's times where, yeah, you probably should leave. Those are few and far between, though, where I wish he would have maybe stayed in the other room, because it would have been an example of how to stay while still being in discomfort, and something that would have been good for their marriage. But I don't know if Zach wants to be there. I really think he's guarded, and I really think he's checked out. So I don't have high hopes. I know this is early, but I don't have high hopes for Michaela and Zach, because those behaviors, and not to say Zach is perfect, but we're seeing Michaela, I don't want to say at her worst, but not at her best. I don't think that's going to change in 8 weeks. These things are deep seated in how she copes, and she copes in very unhealthy ways, and she doesn't know how, and she can't even see. Like, someone would have to really sit with her and help her process why she does what I can see it. Like, as a therapist, I can see it, which is why I say her dad's death, and it's very significant to the way she is. But now she has to find a way to say, okay, let me not cope with it in this manner. Let me use these tools, or let me even see, why is it that I chose to do that? Like, that takes time, and it takes longer than 8 weeks, and it takes longer than 6 weeks, which they've already been married for 2 weeks. So now they have 6 weeks left. I don't foresee them staying together. And y'all know I don't like to make early stances like that, because I'm hopeful, but I think it's way too deep seated. I also think they had sex way too quickly. I mean, to each their own, but like, they had sex way too quickly. And when I saw that, that was my thought. And that's what I think. When you have sex off the bat, it clouds things, it distracts you. And had they not had sex yet, they wouldn't have. They would have had this situation, and he probably would have pumped the brakes on wanting to engage with her, because, hey, like, I've seen this before. I've been here. This is really volatile. It's not going to work for me. And we know Zach comes from a background of a very close-knit family, and his parents are still together, and they seem to have a loving marriage based on what we've seen, or their dynamic as a family. When they presented, they seem to be very close. Not to say things are perfect, because that doesn't exist, but he's like, whoa, this is not what I wanted. And his verbiage his verbiage is kind of checked out in terms of like, I thought that I was done looking for her. That's because he knows he has to keep looking for her. Even when he hugged her at the housewarming, it was like a church hug. We all know that hug that you give, at church. You don't want things to touch too much, so it's like this awkward side thing. It was very awkward. Not someone who wants to be there, and I understood that. So that's Michaela and Zach. We can go on and on about them, but we don't have that time. All right, so next we have Johnny and Bao. I'm gonna just do the heavy ones up front. Johnny and Bao. Listen, I saw this poll on Instagram, and it was like, who's gonna be the bigger problem, Bao or Johnny? And this was like week 1, and like Bao was way ahead of Johnny. And now recently they did another one, and Johnny is definitely the problematic one. Once again, someone who needs some therapy as well. Johnny is gonna be a problem. Here's the thing. Well, Johnny is a problem, not gonna be. He is a problem. Johnny really needs to address the abandonment issues that he has with his father, because it's just running rampant in his relationship, and he needs to find, beyond repairing that relationship, if it's repairable, but I think it is based on him desiring that connection with his dad. Beyond that, having a male figure that could really assist him in this process. Like, he has his mother, he has his aunts, but he really needs a male figure to help kind of be his guide or his mentor, because he's missing that, and it's showing up. Johnny was not ready to be married, and it's sad that he's kind of figuring that out right now. I still say that Bao is a great asset to Johnny in terms of a partner. Bao is incredibly mature. She has her issues. I mean, they both have their issues. So like, everyone has their issues, everyone in the world. But Bao is incredibly mature, and I think better than he deserves right now, because he is so caught up in what he thinks he needs to have, and he is so caught up in fleeing, that he is sabotaging what is right now. I mean, huge red flag that he needed some time away, 2 days away, and then he comes back. Mild pink flag that he dropped this bomb so selfishly on Bao and said, let's sleep on it. How could we sleep on that? Like, that was selfish to me. Like, at least let her communicate with you. You've said what you needed to say, and she now has to sleep with this weight on her chest, try to sleep, and you just get to go to sleep. That's a mechanism of control, because that other person doesn't get to engage or share their feelings, and they have to sit in this turmoil that you are providing. And then he gets excited about the housewarming, which is so superficial. It's like, it speaks to the extroverted, party, fun, avoidant side of him. We're at a housewarming and people are here, and we get to play married couple, and we don't really have to deal with the real issues, and people get to see us as, it's like he likes the fun and the flair of it, but when it comes down to the work, he can't deal. There's like a discomfort within himself that he really has to figure out. He really has to process this checklist. The irony, you don't meet a lot of people's checklist, Johnny. Like, I'm sure if Bao pulled out her Excel sheet, there would be some missing pieces in there based on how you have presented. Yet she is choosing to look at it from a mature perspective and say, okay, there's these red flags, or when I saw that it was someone I knew, I was thinking of all these things. But she does a lot of reframing, which is really important in a relationship, but also important in life. You can be upset about a particular thing, or you can choose to reframe it and say, okay, well, here's how it is working for me. Here's how, I can be appreciative of what's going on, or, oh, okay, well, it could be worse. Like, life is a lot of reframing if you don't want to be like a miserable person. And so she is choosing to do that. Hey, here's these things. He's extroverted. He's open. I'm more reserved. I'm introverted. He says what's on his mind. He's direct. I need that. You know, I may not always like to hear what he's saying, but the messaging is important, and the openness and the directness is important, because that builds trust. When you, whether somebody tells you something you like to hear or not, if you know you're going to get the truth from them, there is a level of trust there that you can't have with someone who you cannot, you know, think that they're going to say the thing that they actually mean to you. So there's stuff there where she's doing a lot of really good reframing, and Johnny is just running in circles like a child. Johnny is like a child running with scissors, and I'm just hoping that Bao does not get cut. I really am. Once again, here would be a great time to like set him up. If they had that weekly relationship coach, hey, you go see so-and-so because you need to get your together, because you're gonna ruin this. It's not about Bao. It's not about the showers. It's not about, you know, her being like a little analytical. Johnny's analytical. He is an IT programmer. Like he this is what he does. This is who he is. And then it travels into his personality where he's so, things need to be XYZ. You're never gonna get 100% of your checklist. That doesn't exist in one person. It's like 80-20. Here's the 80% that you're getting. Be grateful for it. A lot of people focus on the 20%. And a lot of people act stupidly and go after that 20%, thinking that they'll have 100, not realizing that they're going to the 20% and they're giving up the 80%. And so now you're left with significantly less than what you need. Johnny needs to grow up. Johnny needs to get some therapy. Johnny needs to address his daddy issues because they're running rampant in his relationship, and he's a problem. Based on this, and I'm going to do it episode by episode because that's just the best thing to do. Because there's so many rumors out there and spoilers and the old episode and what we see in the upcoming previews. It's too confusing. So this episode, Johnny's a problem, but he really, really needs to deal with it. You know, even the way they clean it up at the end, when she said she was very uncomfortable, he doesn't care. He didn't say, well, you know, I'm sorry you were uncomfortable, or I'm sorry I dropped that bomb on you and I'm here. Like, she's kind of reaffirming it. Like, she said something along the lines of like, she's happy to hear that he's XYZ because it makes her feel like she's kind of figuring this thing out alone and kind of piecing together what he's giving her, instead of him just, you know, being a mature person and truly like expressing himself. And maybe he doesn't really know how to. He's direct, he's open. That doesn't mean that he's really expressive. There's like being direct and being open, and then there's really going layers deep and expressing your feelings and being transparent. And Johnny lacks a lot of vulnerability. He's missing that. He's missing the vulnerability that he needs from his dad, and to have that relationship. He is withholding that, and that's why he's running around on a million first dates. Like, there's a movie, 50 First Dates, from back in the day. Johnny is 500 first dates. Like, you know, it wasn't all them. It's you too. So that's Johnny and Bao. I don't know. I do think that they have so much potential, though. I really do. And I'm rooting for them, but you never know. All right, so next we have Brett and Ryan. Brett and Ryan, I like them more this episode. They have an ease. They have like a level of comfort. They're both saying the same things. Like, they like each other, they enjoy each other. Ryan said that, you know, they talk so much, which is kind of not him. They just don't run out of things to talk, and it's kind of easy. He is like concerned with some of her anxieties and kind of her being a little nervous about everything, and he's more relaxed. So like, for him, that might feel high strung and like overwhelming for somebody who's relaxed, and I could understand that. Like, someone who operates in a high anxious space about stuff, that could really be off-putting to someone who's more go with the flow. But I think that if he didn't try to take on her emotions, then it wouldn't bother him as much. It's like, The manatee, I probably would have screamed too. I would have. I know myself. Just, she's freaking out. Enjoy yourself. Have a good time. That's her experience. You can't change that if that's what she's afraid of. It really doesn't have to change how you look at her. The other thing, the plane ride. Did you guys go? Yes? Okay. Is she saying that she will never go anywhere again? No. So would you guys still travel? Yes. She doesn't ever have to love the plane ride. It's about the experience. So I think Ryan will go far if he learns to let go of being responsible for her experience. Because at the beginning, that's what we do in relationships. It's like we want to make that person feel great or want them to have the experience that we're having. And then as you get settled into a relationship, you realize that although you are one, married, you're still two people, right? And your spouse may always be high strung about a particular thing. It doesn't have to impact the marriage or the relationship. It doesn't have to impact anything that really turns you off about them. Okay, she's like that, whatever. On the flip side for him too, she doesn't have to take on his lackadaisical attitude and take that as a diss if that's who he is. They're saying the same things, so I'm holding on to that. I still get some reservation about them, but maybe it's because they're still kind of taking it slow, and so we're not seeing this bold chemistry on camera, and so you don't really know what to say about them. But I think if they stay the course, they might be fine, because beautiful love really blossoms through friendship. You don't always start off as friends, but I feel like they're taking it slow. They're getting to know each other. And her friend mentioned that at the housewarming, that her husband, they started off as friends and it was really good. That might be their path. Everything isn't always super explosive, but I like that they're saying the same things about each other. So they're on the same course. And listen, Ryan is still like, I want to be a dad, I want to be a husband, I want to be whatever. And that is important to him. So sometimes when we feel a little checked out by Ryan, I don't know if he's maybe a little uncomfortable on camera or if it's overwhelming. I know it would be overwhelming for me to do this. Maybe that's what we're getting, but they're pretty much sticking to being on similar pages. Yes, there's some differences with them and some of the stuff that they're into and some of their views, which will play an important role. But I thought last night's episode, or no, Wednesday night's episode was pretty good for them. If I'm missing something, I'm sure you guys will remind me. All right, so that is Brett and Ryan. Next we have Gil and Myrla. I want justice for Myrla, okay? Because people have been tearing Myrla down for, the moment she got on the show. And she's produced a particular way. She might be a facet of that, but she's not all of that. Because we see her be touchy and lean on Gil and somewhat warm. But she is reserved and she does take her time. That doesn't boast for the best type of candidate on this show because it's fast paced. So you want to see more and you want to see them move a little bit quicker. But you're seeing, for me, based on what we know of Myrla, I think she does enjoy Gil. I think she is happy to be there. She even said last night, if I wanted to just marry anybody, I could have done it, essentially. That's not what I wanted. And we see her friend confirm to Gil that he's never really seen her be affectionate and do all these things. And he's known her for 8 or 10 years. So for me, even though that might be for Gil, oh God, maybe she's not affectionate. The way that I read that was that he's not the person that she's withholding from, and it's not a him thing, because Gil might think, is it me? Even though she says, I'm attracted, but is it me? It's not you, this is her. And so I would find comfort, or I would tell him or advise him to find comfort in the fact that this is who she is. So if she's telling you she finds you attractive and she'll get there, I mean, you can choose not to wait. Gil has a choice. He doesn't have to wait, because I know a lot of people are saying if this was a guy, they would be telling him to move quickly. It's not like a male or female thing. It just is. He doesn't have to stick around. Like, she doesn't have to rush her process. But when her friend said that, you know, he doesn't really see that from her, maybe she's a behind the closed doors type of person. Maybe she's not huge on PDA, but when the cameras are off or in her real life, she is different. Everybody, I think we're so used to, in this society, accessing people and accessing, like, sometimes things that we shouldn't access, that we feel entitled to seeing all these things. And I know they're on a reality show, but she still doesn't have to show all these things. And people just get real bold online, and she needs to, and they need to, and you need. I mean, we've seen many a train wreck on social media of people going at it, like random people going at it about what should and shouldn't be. You don't get to decide that. So I was like, okay, this is her, and they just need to foster that relationship. I don't think it was the best that Gil brought the whole, well, if we don't kiss by 8 weeks, you know, I'm gonna ask for a divorce. Like, stop throwing out that word. It's the worst thing that you can do. We know it's an option there. Stop throwing it out there. Stop using it as a safety net. And if that's your thing, then let that be it. But bringing that up over and over, that doesn't make you more attractive. It really turns people off. I would be turned off by that, because then it would make me not even want to, because it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. Holding that over is a bit much. I think the finance jokes are like, okay, they're getting old. I mean, they're taking it all in stride. I think they have great banter, and I think they get along well like that. I think that'll get old though. And here's the gotcha. This is why I want justice for Myrla, okay? Because Myrla is not that bad. When they were talking about finances, which is really important, Myrla's got herself together, okay? And her brother confirmed that at the brunch the next day after the wedding. She's really smart with her money. But Myrla has a significant savings. She takes care of business first. You know, she chooses how to spend her play money the way that she wants. And this is what bothers me about it. People project what they think is important or not important onto her. And we do it in real life. It's like, oh, well, travel isn't important. That's stupid. Well, that might not be important to you. Doesn't mean that it's not important to me. And it doesn't make it a waste. Fashion is not important. They're just going to sit in your closet. Well, let me open my closet and look at these things and be happy about it. Like, especially if I'm taking care of business. So Gil comes in, clearly he's not in the same tax bracket, and that's fine. But you can't have somebody who she's never met up until 2 weeks ago. You can't match her with someone who is in a completely different space and doesn't desire more when she's very driven. She wants a particular lifestyle, and say, well, she now has to change. That's not going to work. And in a male-female dynamic, I know it might say, well, what if he was matched with her and he made more money and it's just going to be different. It's going to be different. She's a very strong, empowered woman, and where if the shoe was on the other foot, he could say, hey, just have the kids and stay home. Even though we're seeing a lot of like change with that, where men are staying home as well, the dynamic is not the same. And we can go back and forth about that all day long. It's not fair. It's like, but we all know it to be true. So I think that matching her with someone who isn't necessarily, it's not even just about the money, even though we see that she's more put together financially than he is. And she's kind of pegged to be the irresponsible one because she likes shopping, but she has more assets and more savings than you do. So that kind of irritated me, but also they don't necessarily want the same lifestyles. So that's the bigger issue here, because if he were to say, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is where I desire to be, and here's my strategy, here are my goals, and they aligned with her goals in terms of like what they both want, then that would be okay. That could work, because people change, opportunities come. Like, my husband and I are very driven. Both of us are very driven. But if my husband was like, where we are now, this is all I ever want and I'm good, I wouldn't be okay with that. And vice versa. vice versa. If I was like, I don't want any more than this. This is cool. Like, this is where I want to be. He would be like, okay, no, because we both have similar things that we desire, similar experiences that we want to have, similar things that we want to provide for our child in life and for ourselves. So to me, they're mismatched in that way. I think that if they weren't on this show together, I think that Myrla and Gil, first of all, I don't know where they would meet, but you know, if we're gonna just paint this picture, Myrla and Gil would date for a little while. I don't know that they would date for a little while, but I do see them well as friends. And so because I see them well as friends, because they have a banter and you can tell they're attracted to each other, and they say that it's normal and it's easy being together. If they got to that point in a different world, it wouldn't last long enough to carry out a marriage, because I think they want two different things. Like Gil said something like, you know, I make enough for us, something along the lines. And I'm thinking, your picture of us is not the picture that Myrla has in her mind, because it isn't enough for her, you know, based on what you can see that she wants. And those are just, it's more fundamental life desires, life goals. And that stuff is going to get in the way, and that's going to be like, hey, it's like when you have a relationship with someone that you really care about, but you guys just want different things. That's the path that this is going to go down, because they are very different. So other than that, I really enjoyed watching the conversation with Gil's mom. I thought it was sweet. I thought, oh, like, I wish they could have met in person, you know, like how she must feel to like have missed his wedding. But it was sweet. They had a cute little banter, and it was just a sweet moment. You know, I still don't necessarily have high hopes for Gil and Myrla, but I'm just going to take it episode by episode. But I thought it was very sweet. So that's Gil and Myrla. All right, last we have Jose and Rachel. So Jose and Rachel, they have the most natural chemistry. Hands down, it's like they could have met at somebody else's housewarming, and then you find them drinking a glass of wine in the corner, and then before you know it, they're a thing. They have great chemistry. Here's where I think that they have room for improvement, because I didn't see too many glaring things this week that are like, oh my God, that's a huge red flag. It's just these people have been separate for so long. The older you get when you're married, the more set in your ways you are, the more established you are. And so now it's harder to compromise. And people always say it, of course, you compromise in a relationship. Well, compromising is not always fun, because sometimes you just want to get your way. So really, that is an area that they really need to work on. And that will be an area that can bring them together if they figure out what works for them. What I didn't like with Jose, because their hot button issue right now is finances and how to go about the finances, because they have different things that they find to be important. Rachel, travel is really important for her, and Jose ascertaining a particular thing so he can have a particular lifestyle and not have to worry is important. I particularly think they both are important. I did not like when Jose kind of dismissed, you know, if I was traveling, you know, if I was going out with my guys and traveling and doing all types of BS, but he said the word, then I wouldn't have whatever I have. There's a lot of people who do that and still would have a good life and still take care of their bills and still take care of whatever they need to take care of. It felt very dismissive. It felt like arrogant. It felt judgy. And I like Jose. I really do. Jose seems like he is a very nice guy and just a great friend. We saw him go and talk to Johnny and kind of talk about that whole thing. I love that Gil immediately went home and poured tea with his wife. We all do it, like, where it's like, guess what happened? Wasn't supposed to say anything, but you're gonna do it with your spouse. I thought that was such a cute moment, because who hasn't done that? Pillow talk. But back to Jose. I think that he's a really genuine guy. But there is that arrogance, which no surprise there. I mean, he was the guy who's like, she has to be on my level, you know? So we were all kind of worried about that. But I think that he needs to make room even though he has acquired so much and has done really well, and that's great. And I think that he can be a great help to her, because Rachel does not hide the fact that, hey, I'm not the best with finances. I don't always make the best decisions. I do need help with that. He can be a great asset to her, but I think that they need to redefine what's important to them. Because right now it's like, this is important to me. This is important to me. And how are we going to make these things important to each other? Well, they may not ever be. That might not be your thing. So let's do, this is important to us. And so that we both can have this experience together. And I think that they both will enjoy those things, because they're not like vastly different things to enjoy or not enjoy. I think if he goes on a trip with his wife to a beautiful place, he will enjoy that, whether he cares for travel or not. I think that if she learns to get her finances in check and they're able to acquire things and have a better lifestyle, she will enjoy that. They need to have a mediator that can help them not only hear each other, but hear themselves. Maybe Jose, hear that you're coming off a little bit like a jerk right now, being dismissive and somewhat arrogant. Rachel, hear that you're coming off somewhat a little immature right now, and a little like really standing on her independence rather than trying to learn to be interdependent. I don't think either one of them should have full control, but she's kind of like, hey, I want to be married, I want to be married, I want to be married. And then it's like, I don't want your opinion about other things. I'm going to say that I do, but like, I don't want you to be able to control anything. And really, when you get married, it's like, it really becomes who's better. Like, if someone's better with the finances, they should lead it. Like, don't get so caught up in your pride that, well, I suck at finances, but I'm not going to let my spouse, who's exceptional at finances, lead the finances of the household. It's still a collaborative conversation. And I think that's really important. I think even just that verbiage, because people struggle with lead and head of household, whatever your deal is, always know that when you're in a marriage, there needs to be collaborative conversation around things happening. And when you know your spouse well enough, you'll be able to make that executive decision. Like my husband and I, if there are certain things that we're not readily available for, we always say, I made the executive decision on behalf of the other person, because we know the other person well enough, and oh, he'll be fine with that. Oh, she'll be fine with that. We've talked about that. And then there are things that we say, hey, let me get back to you about that. Let me talk to my spouse, blah, blah, blah. And we have a collaborative conversation because we're living this life together. And so it's not about control. It's not about who gets to say what. I think based on them, I think that they should get a joint account, but I think that they should still keep their individual accounts as well. I think that would be a good marriage of what they're kind of struggling with, and then have parameters for the joint account, and then their individual accounts can be just that. So that could be where the play money is, and they should have access to it. It's not like, here's this account and you don't have, like, you're the spouse, have access to it, especially God forbid something happens to you, then it's like this account that you don't have access to. Have access to it, but it's not your account. But the joint account would serve as a healthy way for them to marry this kind of financial situation that they're in and get on the same page about it. Because I can understand, and even I think it's Jose's stepmom, who said, like, don't give him all the control. From a woman to another woman, we're all gonna say that, because women have found themselves often historically, and even present day, controlled by the lack of access to things because they give up their control. So from one woman to another, I completely agree with that. And even his stepmom was like, don't let him, because then it will become. And some people, unfortunately, many people have become that and have experienced that. So I think there's a way to do both. And they just need to kind of get over themselves each and hear each other, which is why I think the third party would be great. Hey, listen to what each other are saying, but listen to how you're saying that. Now let's mirror how you said that. What if I said, well, all your stuff is BS? Or what if, you said, I don't want to do XYZ, I'm independent. Like when you start to, sometimes when we look back at ourselves, we don't really like what we see, but it's not often that we can do that. And sometimes when someone mirrors us, we get defensive and we get upset. And it's like, you're doing the same thing, but you can't see it. So I think their issues can be worked out. There's nothing that I'm super worried about. They just have to get good communication and good compromise. But I still like them. I like their vibe. I think they're gonna be fine. I hope they last. I don't know. But I think that they have great potential as well. So that's it. That is it, y'all. Happy Friday again. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. As always, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share, and I will talk to you guys next week. Everyone have a wonderful week.